Hello and welcome to the Let's Get Moving podcast. Today, I would like to talk a little bit more about the difference of being strong and being fast. And you know that probably, for example, you met a guy in a gym that can do a massive weight on a squat or on deadlift, but can barely jump or move fast. Or even an athlete who looks maybe small but really explodes from the starting line when he wants to sprint. So when you talk about this, there is a huge difference that it's not about the muscle and it's also about the brain. And I would like to dive a little bit deeper into that neuromuscular system, which is practically the engine that generates true athletic power and explosiveness that we have. So, and for me, this is where the strength and speed actually meet each other. And if you want to clarify the key concepts, we know that the strength is simply just maximal force that your muscle can produce, like in a one rep uh, maximal estimation, for example, a squat or a bench press. But in physics, we need to also to have the power, and power is defined actually uh, as a force that we have in our body um, that is multiplied by the velocity. So we need uh, uh, that actually a rate which we can perform that work. So, for example, 99% of all sports and real life movements, um, we don't need the maximal strength. We need power. So we need actually to have that a force that is multiplied by the velocity, so a rate that we can perform our work through a specific duration of time. So we need to apply a very meaningful amount of force very quickly. And our training goal needs to be um, on that improvement, the velocity component without sacrificing your force. So this is where the muscle brain connection occurs. So all of the magic actually happens within that neuromuscular system. So we think that our brain is a main power plant, and our muscles are the appliances. So you can also look at the nervous system, that with the nerves are like the wires, and you can have a huge appliance within a term of big muscles. But if the wiring is weak, the power output should be low. So by that meaning, so the first way of your body adaptations is, of course, throughout the motor unit requirements. So when you lift something very heavily or try to move something fast, your central nervous system activates an increasing number of motor units, um, practically the nerves and all of the muscle fibers that controls them. And within the power training, we forces our brain to uh, rec- recruit a higher percentage of fast twitch motor units, and to do so almost simultaneously. That is what makes a movement much more explosive instead of just grinding it slow. And the second, that the key adaptation occurs with, as we call it, a rate coding. So this is practically the firing frequency, and this is how fast our nerves sense the electrical impulses to the muscle fibers. So it's a very powerful athlete's nervous system that can send these impulses at a much higher frequency than an untrained person, which is very then effectively in utilizing that maximal tension within a fraction of a second that you need to execute a specific movement. So we are practically literally training the speed within our intentional wiring. So this is where the practical takeaway needs a crucial transition. So within that foundation of power, that is not about just getting big. It's getting your brain to communicate better and faster with your muscles. So this is where the neural efficiency is what we are targeting it with a very specific explosive training methods. And I would like to explore a little bit more about this amazing um, involuntary mechanism that our body have to actually generate that free speed within also in a concept of stretch shortening cycle. So we need to specify with the velocity and the intent of our workout. And I don't know if the SAAD principle is very um, known to you, but actually it stands for specific adaptation to imposed demands. So this is where actually SAID stands for. And if you want to be powerful in your training or in your sport, your training must impose that demand for speed. So you can have all the maximal strength training in the world, but if you don't train the intent to accelerate, to execute, and move fast as possible, so that strength will remain pretty much stuck in a slow within that grinding spin. This is where I really put the intention to all of my athletes to do so with a specific time and periodization model that we apply, that they also need to put time and effort into that speed. And even on heavy lifts. So I coach the athletes to do the maximal, to maintain the maximal effort within the accelerative intent. And within the short stretching cycle, this is one of the most important concepts of power generation. So it's like a involuntary reflex. So where a muscle is rapidly stretching within in a eccentrical phase, and then immediately shortens, followed by a powerful contraction. So within a contraction phase, and you can actually think about it as a rubber that's snapping back. So that's the speed and the control and the execution of short uh, stretch shortening cycle. So this involves the tendons and other elastic tissues, of course, which acts like springs in this case. They're storing the potential energy during that stretch. So, and the faster the stretch is, um, the shorter the tension time should be within that amortization phase. The more energy is returned uh, into the concentric contraction. And this elastic return is essentially, as we know in the term in SAQ, as a free speed. So that's where the muscle doesn't have to generate on its own per se, but when you have also on the contrary the issue that is um, solved slow, then heavy footed movement and poor rebound strength. So this is if you do not apply that tension at the full maximum potential speed of your own. But the primary training of stretch shortening cycle is plyometrics. And the plyometric per se is a training that forces your body to absorb and rapidly reapply that force. And we can, see this as maybe like low intensity plyos within like pogo jumps, jumping rope, ankle bounding, just focusing on foot and ankle stiffness and elasticity at the beginning of the workout, or just a periodization model. But then we also have that high intensity plyos. So with depth jumps, stepping off the box jumps, drop jumps, bounce. So forcing yourself rapidly to do that amortization and within a demand of high force output out there. So it's a very crucial point for safety, of course, but you also must have a solid foundation of that maximal strength. So when it comes to a squat is, so it's 2 times of your body weight. So as a elite level, but you can start like at 1.5 times of your body weight. So it's an excellent choice, and an excellent landing mechanics should be applied within that strength before um, any attempt of doing that high intensity plyos. You should, of course, work on your strength first. But then we need to have the velocity-based training and all of the concepts around it, so that we can ensure we are actually training speed within the modern strength and conditioning usage out there, and technology that we have. We can also use the velocity-based training, and the velocity-based trackers are practically um, uses these how should I call them, accelerometers of the linear position that translate us to measure the speed. So in meters per second, or maybe like a barbell if you're doing something in, or like a squat if you're doing in a gym. So this is very crucial because the fatigueness can trick you, but maybe your brain thinks that you're moving fast, but the bar speed tells, or even when you move, when you run, tells actually the exact truth. And within the velocity-based training and the trackers nowadays can allows us to target very specific adaptations based on the velocity zones. So just give me a second. And if you want to do a maximal strength, so your measurements or your output should be between like 0.1 to 0.5 um, um, meters per second. And if you do like a power or speed strength training, so there should be like 0.8 to 1.3 meters per second. So, and if your speed drops below um, as a that preset threshold called as we call the velocity uh, based training, or maybe like in this case like a curve or like a threshold, you should over your set, because in this case you should prevent neural fatigueness and maybe just reassure that your athlete's doing a quality repetition further on. So you should stay in that specific transitional time when you do the practical examples. But a velocity-based training also provides you with immediate feedback, which is quite good with all of the trackers that you can link intentionally and redirect the result that you want to have. So it also teaches the athletes to maybe accelerate to each rep. Um, if you want to do, for example, think about the medicine ball chest pass. So the intent is to throw at the wall, whatever the cause it matters. This leads us to the third segment. So we're actually going to talk about the effectiveness about the movements and the combinations to unlock that explosive power. So the tools that you actually need to incorporate within explosive power. And this is what I actually wrote in my periodization model uh, within the 16-week speed training program. I'm a huge believer of that, but most of the people think otherwise. This is where we call about Olympic lifting. For me, it's like a gold standard to it. But of course, there is a lot of demand, technical demand, that you need to also reconsider in order, to be able to push yourself further. So we are talking about snatches, cleans, jerks. But the things about it on there's another variation like hang cleans, power shrugs that you also can implement. So for me, there are very huge demand and kinks of power development. So they require the athlete to move a heavy load from the floor or from their thigh to overhead or shoulder position in a very single explosive coordinated effort. And they practically demand that high force and high velocity input simultaneously, which making them unmatched for improving that rate for coding when you want to come to the whole body coordination. Because they practically teach the body to fire all muscles in a specific sequence from the ground up to accelerate and to have that output. But the question is always, how do we make our maximal strength and immediately use it for speed? So for me, the answer was always, and I like to put it in my strength training card, in a complex training, but with leverage as post-activation potentiation, or PAP. And PAP is temporarily boost in performance of an explosive movement after performing a very heavy, some resistant exercise. So the heavy lift is a thought to synthesize the nervous system, essentially working up and preparing the highest threshold motor units for some explosive movement. So the examples should be like heavy prime back squats, maybe like 85% of your 1 repetition maximal for 3 repetitions, 3 to 5. Then you should rest enough, 3 to 5 minutes, to shred that fatigueness but retain the neural excitement. And then you should have your explosive target, like a bodyweight vertical jump, drop jump, maybe like for 3 repetitions, box jump as well. So there is like a countless examples here. So the following jumps after the squat should feel much more lighter and more explosive due to the woken up nervous system and muscle units that we occur in the first exercise. So this is where our issue is solved. So bridging bridging that gap between the poor strength and the poor speed, because we're engaging more muscle units, and then our jump feels a little bit lighter because we have those muscle units available now for jumping, which can also lead to jump a little bit higher and even more throughout time. But yes, power isn't just a vertical or a linear thing. So in many sports, we also have rotational power. So use a medicine ball throws to train this. But maybe unlike the cable machines, throwing a med ball allows you to release all of the load, which practically forces the athlete to use that maximum acceleration throughout the full range of motion. So of course you need to match up the quality of the movement, but there is, for me, a much more higher output. And I like, the rotational scoop throws. I like the overhead backwards throws, like that for that vertical hip extension power. So there are like a key examples here that I like to use and to incorporate. But not to forget about the contrast training for endurance. Yes, this is also one of my favorite. Even the endurance should be within a specific neural efficiency, of course. And this is for me where the contrast training can teach the body to use less energy for a given momentum of speed under specific also time. And this might involve pairing a heavy, maybe like a hill sprint or incline sprint, with a maximal speed run on a flat ground, or a heavy sled push with a quick acceleration sprint. And this helps, of course, to maintain form and that power late in a race that fatigues after set, and that you can also incorporate, of course, in a gym. But yeah, this is just like a practical takeaway in a transition to sport that I wanted to mention it. So the tools are very clear here for me, but the intent of your athlete needs to be even more clear. Power work for me is always low volume, high quality, and high intensity. And if your bar speed slows down in a gym, or your jump height also drops, you're no longer training power. I think you're just fatiguing yourself here. And we need to talk about this crucial importance about the recovery, and how to safely put these demanding methods into a long-term plan. So this is also very important thing to do. And excuse me, so while that effective power training is extremely fatiguing our central nervous system, unlike a muscle fatigueness, which feels like local soreness, central nervous system feels more like heaviness, low motivation, lethargic, sluggishness. So you must respect the rest at all cost, because for high intensity power work like heavy plyometrics or complexities, you might prioritize quality over quantity. And if you do too many reps, you teach the body to perform the movement slowly, which you don't want to do. This is exactly the opposite goal. So the volume of power work must always remain low. And this is where your issue should be solved. You're preventing that neural burnout and chronic fatigueness. And this is where I practically also realized the more quality, the more top tier athlete I have to incorporate even less, maybe from the work of volume uh, on him, because the greater the power output is, the longer the recovery must be. And you will practically see them, especially at the Olympics. You will see them, they will do some kind of short dynamic stretching, not a lot of things. Of course, they will prepare their body, but you will not see them stressing their body at all because of it. So this is very important as we talk in a correlation between the recovery and the nervous system. Um, but yeah, how do you recover at central nervous system? It's not foam rolling, it's sleep, and it's that stress management. It's the stress management that all the stress should come from the workout and nothing else. But the deepest neural recovery happens during very deep and restorative sleep. And if your sleep quality is poor, or your lifestyle is filled with high physiological and psychological stress, your nervous system will be too drained to generate that true power, regardless of how strong your muscles are. So this is where you really need to put the prioritization to recovery as much as the training itself. And yeah, that's a must. But the power work is not something that is done like in 1 year. It's typically something that is sequenced, and also you can put it very good in a structured training plan like periodization. So of course, at the beginning you have the hypertrophy and the endurance phase. So just initial pace work. Then you should move to a maximal strength. So building that formation, a foundation for yourself, and to typically uh, uh, introduce your muscles to that specific force component. And then after that, there is a power and speed strength. So, excuse me. So the phase where we apply that neural concept, we are bridging the maximal strength into a high velocity movement. And this is practically very done closer to the competition season. And with these sequences, we ensure that we have a very robust strength base so that we can safely and effectively execute the very fast, very high impact, and very demandful movements. But with improper training and timing, there is a low strength transfer. And with that high intensity power work, of course, the higher injury potential is, and to all of the high forces involved with it. So for me, the two non-negotiable things are mobility, stability things. So we need to ensure that adequate joint mobility and joint stability is required, especially with the ankle. hip and knee before moving into the speed. And stiffness, of course, the immobile joint can absorb force properly. But then not to forget the landing mechanics. In that all-in jumping plyometrical work, the landing is more important than the takeoff. And as much as we land softly and quietly, with the hips, with the knees, with the ankles, all of the flexing that happens, we absorbing that force, and the landing becomes in some kind of matter. If it becomes sloppy due to the fatigueness to less resting time in between, please stop the exercise immediately. This is where you have to do the monitoring and auto-regulating yourself and your athlete. And the best coaches out there, I think they're also the best in auto-regulating themselves. They can adjust themselves and the workout based on the athlete's current readiness. Simple as that. And now you will see that trackers, but you can start pretty easily. Just simply include that subjective rating by asking the athletes the rate of their fatigueness, mood, sleep quality, readiness just to involved in that high demand sport and intensity, with maybe just simple test, checking that jump height with a simple vertical jump test before the session. And if the number of significantly results are lower than their average, so it signals, of course, your athlete that it is neural fatigue and that the volume should be cut. And of course, listen to your body, listen to your instinct. So train for power with maximum effort and a minimal volume. And this is all the respect to the central nervous system and the cost of it. And I think if you master these concepts, you're definitely going to just move more past just being strong and really become truly powerful and explosive throughout the time. So this is my message to you, and just pay more attention to the central nervous system and in that development for the power output. So thanks for listening, and until the next time, yeah, stay safe and let's get moving, people. Bye bye. Till the next time.